Earlier, you mentioned ESCP Best Practice papers. Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, I think these are really important developments for me as president of ESCP, but also the editor of the journal, because we publish a lot of academic papers. But the really important bit is, how are these implemented into practice? So every sort of September, October, we put out calls. Why calls? People don't have to be members of ESCP to submit an abstract of best practice, because the ESCP best practices, we're putting our kite mark on them, so they don't have to be members of the society. Obviously, we would like them to be, and we encourage them to be. So they submit abstracts. Those are reviewed independently by a panel of 5. We've set criteria. The best ones are then invited to submit full papers to IGSCP. Now, there's a specific structure of that paper. So it's not a normal research paper, because here we're looking for innovations in practice, really about how do you take the evidence from the literature, the policies we've got, all the clinical guidelines, how do you translate that into an innovation in practice? How do you develop that practice? So that's what we're looking at in the paper. It's not an introduction, method, results, discussion, traditional paper, but it's got a section of development. How did you develop it? And we asked them to think about using some theories of development. So how did you develop it? Who did you work with? How did you cost it? Then how did you implement it? Who did you speak to? How did you actually get something into practice? And they were really interested in to tell us the facilitators and what went well, but it's really important to tell us what did not go well, what didn't work, what were the barriers. But then even more importantly, how did you overcome those barriers? And then how did you evaluate? How do you know it's best practice? How did you know it was working? And how are you sustaining it? So I think these are really important publications. We've published maybe about 10 or 11 now. Our very first one was on a big interprofessional network on Parkinson's disease in Germany, which had no pharmacy input. So this best practice paper is about how they pulled the pharmacy input and actually showed what pharmacy, the difference it could make within that. So had that been submitted as a traditional research paper, it would not have had the robustness, rigor as an academic piece of work. But in terms of best practice, it was really important. The next one was looking at advanced general practice pharmacists. So pharmacists working at a very high level within GP practices, and how they developed the simulated teaching for that development. So how they actually developed the teaching model, how it was implemented, how it was evaluated. And then another really interesting example that leads on from the last one is really looking in the Netherlands about how they have developed pharmacists working in general practices, how they've taken the evidence base and thought, how do we turn this into something that is really working? So that's just 3 examples, and they're nice because I think they show the pillars of the ESCP, because we're around practice, education, and research. I suppose, well, the last one that we've just published, which is a really important one, is how in a big UK teaching hospital, they have implemented a 7-day, 24-hour-a-day clinical pharmacy service. Because historically, we've been very good at doing things Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, but what happens the rest of the time? So this really just describes the challenges they overcame, how they were costing it, how they were evaluating it, and how they had to actually pull back on some services to spread the service across 7 days a week, 24 hours of the day. So to me, as president, but also editor, these are extremely important pieces of work because they show the real life implementation of the research. We need the research to give us the evidence base, but we need to think, how does it make a difference in practice?
Very interesting. And now could I ask you about ESCP's aspirations for the future? What's in the medium-term plan?
To me, I think it's about sustaining a lot of what we've done, increasing the membership, really looking at the national agreements, and always reaching out to our members. But, you know, are we delivering what you want us to deliver? And really increase, as I say, the member base that we've got, do more work with the students. So we're working more with some of the European student groups as well, really around clinical pharmacy. Because it's interesting, you know, coming from the UK, which is acknowledged as a leader in clinical pharmacy, it's easy to forget that not everywhere is at that level. And not say that everything is perfect in the UK, because we know that it's not, but not all countries at that. There's a huge diversity, even across Europe, in terms of clinical pharmacy education, clinical pharmacy practice. So how do we spread that? How do we even that a bit? So I think those are really important things for the society.
As a matter of interest, what is the current membership of ESCP?
Current membership's about 500, so we've doubled it in the last 2 years, and it's starting to go up and up and up. So every month we're seeing it rising. So, you know, we're pleased with that.
And has ESCP identified research priorities for clinical pharmacy?
But this is a very timely question, because our research committee is just about to finish the piloting of a questionnaire, of a survey that will go out to members about their research priorities. And can we gather those together into then form the research? So these will be the research priorities of the individuals. Can we gather those together into the research priorities of the society to help meet those research priorities of the individuals? But, you know, I'm also keen, you know, if we've got people in lots of different countries doing similar pieces of work, and we see it when our abstracts come through for our events, we need to somehow link those people better together. So what changes from being 10 small pieces of research becomes one big, impactful piece of research, that there's then maybe a chance to get research funding for that, not through ESCP, but through other organizations with multinational research. So I think, you know, there's a piece of work for us to do around almost scoping those abstracts. I think actually we can link these people together around that, or link people who've got a bit more expertise in areas with people who've got less expertise in those areas.